Hey everyone, welcome back to our channel. I'm Yomesh Gupta. Today's video is the third part of the front-end debugging sessions or debugging series that we have been doing for some time now. If you haven't seen the previous parts, I'll share it in the description or in the comments. You can check them out. Today we are going to take a look at an interesting problem statement, an interesting front-end bug. We'll try to identify the root cause, and while doing so, we'll discuss core front-end fundamentals, JavaScript fundamentals, and see how those help us in solving issues that come up in real production-ready apps. So without wasting any time, let's get started. So recently on the Devtools Tech platform, I added a new feature which is currently not, offered by any other platform like DevTools, which offer interview preparation, be it paid or unpaid. They don't offer this. So if I try to import a module on DevTools now, then it would give me native suggestions of all the file paths and the dependencies, and I can import it. And plus, these suggestion changes as I import more or create more files. So let's say I create this game.js, and if I install Lodash as a dependency, now if I try to import game from, then it will give me game/game.js as the suggestion. Plus, let's say if I try to import Lodash, then it would give me Lodash as a suggestion. So this was one of the most requested features, which currently is not only offered by core editors like VS Code and WebStorm and others, like you might be used to that. Plus, in terms of companies, only multi-million dollar companies like VS Code or StackBlist offer as part of their or other companies which are VC funded or businesses, they offer this. But apart from that, no other platform offers this. So while building this, I came across a scenario where I thought that we can introduce a bug, and it would be, a good way to, discuss debugging and solve that bug. So let's see a toned down version of this code. So let's say we have the similar code editor. It's currently on my local, and we are getting some file paths. So I'm giving a demo here. So we have some file paths, like currently these file paths are provided to this editor, and we have 4 file paths like constant, index.js, directory, and app.js. Now uh, maybe once the editor is loaded or a component is rendered, or even before that, we made a async call to the server, or we are making some async operation where we are fetching the file paths from server or local storage. Initially we had 4 files, but after that the number of files became 7. We loaded some more files. Let's say this is like a submission, or this is some sort of uh, already provided data. So if I try to import right now any module, let's say if I import directory from, then I get the initial four suggestions which was provided, but all the suggestions which were dynamically or loaded in an async operation, those are not present here. So let's say if I try to import button from button, then I'm not getting the updated value. So why is that? Here, this is the bug which we are going to discuss, that we are only getting the initially loaded values, why we are not getting the updated values. So let's check out the code behind this editor and see what could be the possible error. So this is the code editor component as of now, and it takes file path as a prop. This could be, initially hard coded, or maybe coming from a server, or loaded from local storage. It could be anything. Now let's close this first. So we have this editor component which is coming from Monaco editor React. This is the same editor that powers VS Code, like a version of it, and we are using the same editor here. So my choice of using this editor in DevTools platform also was to give my users familiar feel, because it's a powerful editor and people are used to VS Code. So similar themes, similar language shortcuts, and so on. So when this editor is loaded, we provide a prop called onMount, and to that prop we pass a callback handle mount, and this is invoked whenever the editor is mounted. Okay. Now if we check the handle mount function, so if we close this for now, so what we are saying is that here we are registering a callback, that to JavaScript language, we are registering a callback, and inside this we are telling that the callback should trigger on these characters, and this is the actual callback provided to provide completion items. So the idea is that whenever these characters are typed in the editor, then we'll invoke this callback. We get two arguments here. One is model and one is position. Position basically refers to the current position in the code editor, and model is the editor's model. Basically it's like an object with multiple properties that we can use to access content of the editor, maybe data, maybe we want to trigger some commands and so on. So we do some computation, we'll get whatever the code is, currently typed code is, and we'll check that if the currently typed code is contains an import statement. So if it's something like const, if the user is typing something like this, then this value would be false. But if user is typing import xyz from, then this value would be true. So if it is false, we return the suggestion as an empty array, we'll show nothing. But if we have import statement, then we do some computation, we'll try to find the word and some range, and we compute the suggestions here and return the suggestions. Now these suggestions are basically all the files like src slash directory and so on, basically all the file paths and all the dependencies like React and so on. Now the thing here is that we are getting this file path as as a prop. So like I mentioned that initially we have 4 file paths, but we load the file path like in the parent component of the editor, we load it from a server or local storage, and the prop changes over time. And however, our value, if we try to import something like if button from, then it is not updating we are not getting all the 7 values, we are just getting the initial 4 values. So let's see what's happening here. So if I go to mount and if I try to console log it here, let's say if I say upon mount and we render the file paths inside this, let's see what happens. So we are getting the 4 file paths, then mount function happens, and inside mount we are getting only those 4 file paths, and after our prop changes, then nothing happens because mount only happens once, it is getting invoked once. So you can do one thing, I let me just put it on the screen. You can pause the video right now, you can think why this is happening and how can we fix this, what is the error here. You can pause, you can mention your hypothesis in the comments and possible solutions, and for others we can move on. So when this mount is happening, we are getting the value file path, which is the initial array. So and we are using that file path to map and create the suggestions here. So one possible solution could be, or I mean I'm just listing out possible ways to solve this. Now doesn't make them right, it we will see one by one and see if it works or not. So we are the props are changing, but this value is not changing, it is getting the old value. So that means what can we do, can we track it? So let's say, or what initial could be like, let's say if we are not getting the updated value, we can create a function called get files. Let's see if it works, and inside this function we can return the file paths. So now this is a getter function, and inside our callback we can create a, we can get this, we can invoke this, we can say get files, and let's console this out, fp, and rather than file paths which was a stale value, we can use fp.map, and let's comment this out for now, and let's check what is the fp value we are getting. So let's refresh this. Now inside our inside our editor, let's import something. So our FP is getting invoked, I mean our getter is getting invoked, but every time we are getting the old 4 value. That means even though our getter is getting called, we are getting the stale value. Another, you in your mind, another solution could be that why can't we just track it, like why can't we set it in a state, let's say FP and set FP, and we can say use state and file paths. So this could be one possible solution. So we'll comment this out for now, and we can say use effect, that whenever, because it could be a side effect, right, when if our file path changes, then we need to update the state. Initially we'll have the 4 values, but after an async operation, the this variable will contain 7 values, so we need to update it. So update our state, so we can say file paths, and inside this we can call, we can say invoking effect, and we can see what values we are getting inside it. And we have the FP we are using here, so let's comment this out. So if we are saying, see, initially our effect is getting invoked, we are getting the 4 values, then our effect is getting invoked again. Don't worry about the multiple effect calls, that is just because of development version. So it is invoked again, and we are getting the 7 values. That means our state will contain updated value. We can even check the state. Let's see, if we go to and if we go to code editor and we'll check the state, we have all the 7 values here. So let's try it out now. So if we import xyz from, still we are getting the 4 values only, even though we defined a state variable, we are updating the state variable, but when we try to access it inside our callback, then we are only getting the old 4 values. Why is that? You can pause here, you can think about the issue here. If you want, I can go back to the code, you can read the code here, just take a screenshot or maybe pause and read the code and tell me in the comments why this is happening. What happens here is that when this handle mount is getting invoked, let me comment out everything else. So let me and let's comment this out, and this would be file paths. Okay, now when this, like I showed you, that when this handle mount is getting called, we capture the value of file paths. So basically what happens here is that we can access the file paths inside this function due to closures, and this, whenever this function is invoked, it captures the value of file paths within its scope during that particular render cycle. So what happens here is, in the layman terms, that when this function is getting invoked for the first time, it gets that value, it can access it through closure, and it captures that value. And no matter if file path changes over time, it will still access the old value. So this is what we call stale closures, that even though the value we are trying to consume is changing over time, the function inside which we are using the value still refers to the old value. This is a real world example of closures, or specifically stale closures. What happens a lot of time, that when you take interviews of people, or for senior folks, even 7 years, 10 years, when you ask them about closures, they won't be able to give you a single example. They can only give you foo or bar examples, or they'll tell you the bookish knowledge. But this is the actual real world bugs, where core concepts like closures, what is closure, how stale closures affect your code, how can you fix these things, actually come into play. And this knowledge, like that my method is getting invoked, it is capturing a particular value within its scope due to closures for that particular render cycle. This is not taught by all the uh, courses courses that are sold by bhaiyas and didis on YouTube or over the internet. I don't have anything against those courses. They might be telling you good stuff, but the core fundamental or the advanced stuff, they don't tell you that. And unfortunately, these type of things you cannot learn from 15-second meme reels also. I mean, they might be good for beginners, but if you want to advance, if you want to go to the next level, then these things you need to learn, and you need to present it well in an interview. That you can't be just saying that closure is so and so thing, that someone just told you a bookish knowledge in their YouTube video and you just repeat it like a parrot. No, give them real world examples. Those explaining these cases to someone and finding a possible solution, is your path, which differentiate you from the crowd, which actually makes you achieve or earn the big bucks. So let's take a look at couple of possible solutions and how they're going to work. So our aim here is that this callback register completion item provider, and inside this provider completion item should get the most updated value every time. Currently what's happening is that when this editor is mounted, we invoke the handle mount, and inside this we capture the value and we use the same stale value over multiple render cycle, but we have to change that. So one way to do that whenever this while path changes, we should invoke the handle mount again. And let's clean up this a bit so that we have more space. So let's remove all this. So now, and inside file paths, like I talked about earlier, that we can when file path changes, then we can call this handle mount. But if we do that, then it would say cannot read properties of undefined, because this method expects two parameters, like some, this is we are not using, and this editor instance. And when we invoke the effect, then we don't have this. So maybe we can track it. We can say use ref, and inside the our mount we can say dot current. If we don't have it, then we'll set it dot current is equal to, and we can use this directly here. Wherever we are referring the Monaco, we can refer it here directly. And inside our editor, so right now this won't work, because let me tell you why. So uh, if we execute this, we'll still get this error only, that cannot read properties of undefined, because our effect is getting called initially before mount. So if I say console log effect, you'll see our effect would be getting called. So our effect is getting called, then our mount is getting called, and since our effect is getting invoked, we are not having any value inside this. So what we can do here is that if we don't have this value set yet, then we'll return, we won't be invoking. So that means for the first time we are skipping the effect, and on subsequent times we'll be calling the effect. So see, right now it's working. So if let's see if it fixes our issue. So if I import anything, then I'm getting app.js components, directory style. We are getting it, all the values, duplicate values. We are getting the latest value, we are getting const, we are getting the button also, but we are getting duplicate values. Why is that? Why are we getting duplicate values inside our suggestions? That is because whenever this effect is getting invoked, it is setting a new callback, but we are not clearing the old callback. We are just queuing multiple callbacks. That means we have to clean up this. We have to invoke this dispose function every time. It is returning a dispose function that clears the previous callback. So let's see how can we do this. if we do this after our callback is set, then it will dispose the latest callback. But we don't need to do that. We want, what our ideal behavior is, that whenever we set a new callback, before this we have to dispose of the old callback. This is like what we used to see in debounce and throttle, that whenever we set a new timer, we clear the old timer. How can we do that? Again, we can use a ref, dispose ref, or you can, a better name would be cleanup ref. We can say use ref, and inside this, after setting this, we can say if dot current. If there is a value, then we can call it, and we can say clean ref dot current equal to null, and this current should be equal to the dispose function. So once we have set up the new callback, we get the dispose function, we'll set it up, we'll just attach that value to the current value. Now if we go back here, we say, see, our mount is getting called twice. So if I import it now, app from, we are getting all the new values, all the 7 values, and all the values and unique values. We are getting no duplication. So this fixes our bug. Let's revise what we have done so far. So our issue was that our handle mount was getting invoked once, and it was capturing the stale value across multiple render cycle. To avoid that, what we have done is that we are invoking it whenever our file path changes. But to invoke it, we need this reference to this variable, plus we also need reference to the dispose function returned by the callback. So basically this is a cleanup function, and to do that, what we have done is we created 2 variables to track these. And if we don't have the edit reference, we set it, and if we have the cleanup function, we call it first to clear the previous uh, callback. So this is helpful in the case, let's say your file path changes multiple times. Let's say user is creating new files, new folders, they are adding new dependencies. In that case, this handle mount will be invoked multiple times. So when it is invoked, we clean up the previous callback and set the new callback. So we saw one solution where we use refs and we were tracking multiple items and invoking the cleanup and all that. I'll show you another solution which is comparatively much simpler and doesn't involve this complex tracking and everything. Let's reiterate our aim, which I've done countless times now, that we need to get the most updated value inside our provide completion items. And how can we do that? So I'll show you a very simple session. Let's clean up first. So we'll remove all this. We'll even don't need the use effect. We don't need all this tracking. So we can, since we have removed it, we'll remove this. We'll go inside this and remove this also, current, and we are just resetting it to the old state where nothing was working. So if I go here and if I try to import it, import something, then we are getting just 4 values. We are not getting the updated values right now. So far so good. We are back to 0 state. Okay, so let's fix this. We'll again track, but this time we'll track the file paths there. Use ref is particularly helpful when we have to deal with stale closures. We can get, we'll assign file paths to file paths ref, but we'll also do one thing, dot current will assign the file paths latest value. Now we'll take this and use it here. So if I just import something now, see, we are getting all the values and all the unique values here now. No fuss about tracking complex state, no use state, no use effect. You must simple use ref. So what happening here is that that our prop is changing over time, which causes our component to re-render. Initially, this would be an array, our current, with 4 values. Then this, whenever this prop changes, our code editor component will be re-rendered, and this will be getting executed every time. So this will become array, and this will get the latest value, and whenever our file path changes, we'll set it to the latest value every time it updates. You can do one thing. If you feel that since it, the cost of this is negligible, if you want, you can go ahead and try to use a use effect that whenever your this file path changes, then only you set the value if you think the cost of this is too much, because this component would be re-rendered every time your code editor changes and so on. So you can go ahead and try that optimization too. But this particularly use effect things, because this is a mutable value, we assign it, and it's outside the outside this handle mount, that where it is getting invoked just once. There we are not using the file paths inside handle mount. We are using an object that is created outside, and it's a mutable object which is assigned the most latest value. That's why you are getting the updated value here. So this is the end of the video. I hope you were able to learn something new today, that how in real world apps we encounter fundamental concepts. Like in our case, we were accessing a value that was uh, stale closure specifically, and how these core fundamentals are useful in the production ready apps. And these are the things that are grilled in top companies interviews, where they ask you to give an example for closure, or maybe they'll give you a code snippet which is broken and you have to fix it, and there could be some fundamental concepts that are being applied here. So if you don't have experience, if you don't understand those things, then you won't be able to pass that bar, and you won't be able to make it to the top companies. Let me know how you feel. Let me know what's your opinion on the solution I provided. Do share your feedback in the comments. There are a couple of links mentioned on the screen, like a top mate. If you want to book a particular session with me to talk about your career, or me helping you in your interview prep, or you growing from a junior to senior level or senior to staff level, we can talk about that. You can also use the DevTools practice link to just type it out in the browser and go to a random question and solve one question per day. As always, if you see any value, then please do like, share and subscribe. It would mean a lot. Till next time, see you. Take care. Bye bye.